Okay, so let's unpack this. We are diving into a figure whose name is, well, it's synonymous with the origins of one of the world's longest-lasting empires, the Ottomans, but about whom we know, quite literally, shockingly little for certain. We are talking about Ertugrul Ghazi.
And that contrast is, that's what makes him so fascinating. He's the father of Osman Sirius, who was the actual architect of the Ottoman state. But Ertugrul himself is a 13th century figure, just largely shrouded in historical fog.
Right.
So if we look at the sources, our mission today is pretty clear. We need to separate those rare, verified historical fragments. It's like finding a single coin in a massive desert from the incredibly powerful legends that grew up later. And we need to understand why this man matters beyond just being a royal ancestor.
And what immediately jumps out, even before we get into the biography, is the central conflict the sources present. It's a conflict that challenges the very foundation of the empire's origin story.
It's the perfect historical entry point. The sources reveal a major disagreement among historians right away, specifically about Ertugrul's paternity, and whether the traditional accepted narrative linking the Ottomans to the prestigious Kayid tribe is historically sound, or if it was, as many sources suggest, a deliberate 15th century fabrication.
That sets the stage beautifully for our first segment, the historical shadow, because as one source just flat out states, almost nothing is known with certainty about Ertugrul's life, other than that crucial, non-negotiable fact that he was the father of Osman.
It creates a massive data gap. To construct any narrative of his life, historians are forced to rely on official Ottoman histories, and these were written 100 to 150 years after the state was even established.
Wow.
Yeah, and the further away you get from the actual events, the more political necessity and myth start creeping in. The sources emphasize these later narratives are of questionable accuracy and must be read critically.
Which brings us directly to the great debate, the two fathers. The official traditional story, the one immortalized in popular culture, says Ertugrul was the son of Suleiman Shah, leader of the Kayid tribe. These were Oghuz Turks, Turkomans, who were migrating west out of Central Asia to escape the Mongol conquests.
Right, that's the grand accepted narrative. It provides the Ottomans with this sweeping, prestigious, nomadic heritage. But the problem is that Kayid claim has been really heavily scrutinized. Many historians suggest this specific genealogy was just fabricated in the 15th century. It was a retroactive PR move.
The PR move.
Yeah, designed to link the newly powerful Ottoman dynasty to the broader heroic narrative of Oghuz Turkish history.
So if that traditional view is built on, political ambition, what does the hard evidence actually show, the stuff you can hold in your hand?
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We have numismatic evidence, actual coins. They're undated, but minted during the time of Osman Nest. And crucially, one coin confirms Ertugrul was historical. It reads, Osman bin Ertugrul. Osman, son of Ertugrul.
Okay, so he existed. That's a start.
But the same evidence complicates the paternity question. Another coin reads, Osman bin Ertugrul bin Gündüz Alp.
Gündüz Alp. That's a completely different father staring back at us from the earliest physical records. So the most reliable, earliest evidence contradicts the later official state narrative.
Precisely. And it wasn't just the coins. Earlier written chronicles, like Enveri's Düstername from 1465, also named Gündüz Alp as the father. If you look closely, the whole Suleiman Shah version only became the undisputed official tradition after Ashok Pashazade's incredibly influential 15th century chronicle was circulated and adopted.
So they literally chose a new father later on. It really does sound like a royal rebranding exercise. But why? Why the switch? Why was linking the Ottomans to the Kayid tribe specifically so crucial in the 15th century?
Well, it was about legitimacy and power projection. By the 15th century, the Ottomans weren't just a small frontier state anymore. They were the dominant power in Anatolia and the Balkans. They were dealing with other powerful Turkoman dynasties, and they needed an unassailable origin story. Claiming descent from the Kayid tribe, who were seen as the noblest lineage of the Oghuz Turkic nation, provided that vital stamp of approval. It established them not just as a local dynasty, but as the true, destined successors of the larger Turkic tradition.
So Ashok Pasharzad wasn't just writing history. He was constructing a politically useful myth that justified Ottoman rule over their rivals.
He was the official narrative builder, exactly. The sources even note that a contemporary historian, Shukrullah, writing in the same period, had to trace Ertugrul's lineage all the way back to Noah, just to give them some kind of ancient pedigree. It shows how little firm documentation they had and how much effort went into creating one.
Okay, so despite the father issue, the later traditions do give us a consistent picture of the Great Migration. Ertugrul had 3 brothers, Sungurdakin, Gundudu, and Dundar. And when their father died, to do with the Suleiman Shah or Gundu's Alpta tribe fractured.
It split in two. Sungur Taken and Gundozdu, they took their clans back east, essentially retreating from the chaos. But Ertugrul, alongside his mother Heme Hatun and his brother Dundar, made the decisive choice to lead his followers west into Anatolia, right into the political landscape of the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum. And that choice of direction west toward the Byzantine frontier is what changes everything.
That's the pivot point. If he's not just a refugee, how did he turn this small band of followers into a valued military asset? This brings us to his historical role.
He was a specialist in that chaotic frontier environment. The sources define him with two key roles. First, an Uchbey, a marcher lord, a semi-autonomous military commander tasked with guarding the volatile borders of a larger state. Second, and maybe more importantly for the culture that followed, he was a Ghazi, a heroic champion fighter for Islam, fighting the Christian Byzantines on the frontier.
And to understand why the Seljuks would even hire him, we have to look at their situation. The Seljuk Sultanate of Ron wasn't doing well at this point, right?
They were in deep, deep trouble. After their defeat by the Mongols at the Battle of Kozades in 1243, they were basically a Mongol vassal state. The Sultanate was rapidly buckling under Mongol pressure, fracturing into smaller principalities called beyliks. And all that internal chaos meant they just could not defend their western borders effectively against the Byzantines anymore. That chaos was Ertugrul's great opportunity.
He steps into a security vacuum. By assisting the struggling Seljuks against the powerful Byzantine forces, he earned his first significant reward.
And that reward was land given for security. The Seljuk Sultan Kakubad I granted Ertugrul grazing lands in Karakadas. That's a mountainous, sort of remote area between Diyarbakir and Urfa. The rationale was purely strategic. The Sultan needed a loyal, fierce force to repel hostile incursions. He was given land, but it was basically a dangerous buffer zone.
But the true seat of the empire wasn't in Karakadas. Ertugrul was a successful Ghazi, so he obviously had ambition. He later received a second, vastly more important grant.
Yes, the move to Suut. He later received the village of Suut and the surrounding territories, which he actually conquered and secured himself. And this shift from Karkada to Suut is the geographic key to the entire Ottoman enterprise.
Why Suut? Why was it so much more important than his first land grant?
Suut was located right on the operational border, the Gaza frontier between the collapsing Byzantine Empire and these burgeoning Turkoman principalities. This position meant constant conflict, which provided continuous opportunity for Ghazi leaders like Ertugrul to gain wealth, followers, and territory. You weren't just defending a border, you were actively expanding it. Ertugrul died there around 1280 or 1281, and crucially, Suut became the first effective capital under his son Osman I. The location was everything.
It's amazing that even the most basic family tree is this contested. We do know he had other sons besides Osman the Sarabatu or Safji Bey and Gunduz Bey, but even the identity of the mother of the empire's founder it's all shrouded in confusion.
Absolutely. Here we have another perfect example of myth just overtaking history. In later romanticized myths, Osman V's mother is called Halime Hatun. There's even a grave near Ertugrul's tomb in Suut that's dedicated to her.
Right.
But historical analysis suggests this is likely a misattribution. The true mother, according to stronger historical lines, was Haim Anna, and her grave is reportedly located somewhere else entirely in the Damanis district of Kutafiha.
So why is the mother's identity so fluid? Is it just because the sources couldn't agree, or is something else going on?
I think it's the latter. When you're building a national origins story centuries later, the female figures, especially the mother of the founder, they often become symbols. Symbols of the nation's heritage, its piety, its nomadic past. Her name and her resting place are used to anchor the narrative to a specific location or ideal, often at the expense of historical accuracy. The myth provides the value that the records just lack.
That really underscores how much of this deep dive is about the construction of a legacy. Let's move to segment 3, the enduring legacy and cultural icon. Even if the details are fuzzy, the devotion to his memory is concrete. Ertugrul has a physical legacy. A tomb and a mosque at Suut, supposedly built by Osman Suut himself.
What's fascinating about Suut is that nothing certain can be said about the origin of those structures because they've been rebuilt and modified so many times. The current mausoleum visitors see today was substantially renovated or entirely rebuilt, depending on the source, by Sultan Abdulhamid II in the late 19th century.
That renovation is telling, isn't it? The Ottoman Empire was in decline in the 19th century, yet the Sultan is reaching all the way back to the founder.
Oh, it was a very deliberate political move. By restoring the shrine of the founder, Abdulhamid II was trying to emphasize the ancient legitimacy and continuity of the dynasty. It was a call to return to their foundational strength during a period of crisis, and the cultural impact persists. Sudut still holds an annual festival today, celebrating the memory of the early Osmans.
And his name was used as an official tool of state identity long before that. We see it applied to military hardware and institutions. The Ertugrul Cavalry Regiment in 1826 and the famed Ottoman frigate Ertugrul in 1863.
And today, that legacy serves as a powerful diplomatic tool for modern Turkey. Take the Ertugrul Ghazi Mosque in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan, completed in 1998. The Turkish government established that mosque as an explicit, high-profile symbol linking Turkey and Turkmenistan. It deliberately taps into that shared Oghuz Turkmen history we were talking about earlier, its historical identity used for modern geopolitical bonding.
Turkmenistan recognizes him heavily, too. A statue of Ertugrul surrounds the Independence Monument in Ashgabat. He's praised in the Ronama, and he was even on a 2001 commemorative coin. That shows the enduring power of that shared myth.
It's a perfect illustration of how a figure whose life is historically sparse becomes this massive cultural and political bridge. The less we actually know about the man, the more space there is for him to become whatever the modern state needs him to be.
But maybe the most influential way Ertugrul has penetrated global consciousness recently isn't through diplomacy or texts, but through pop culture. He's been portrayed in several Turkish TV series, most famously Dirilish, Ertugrul, which is resurrection, Ertugrul, and its sequel, Kuruluş, Osman.
The global impact of these shows, it really can't be overstated. They took a historical shadow and turned him into an international icon of heroism and virtue.
I was truly surprised by the scale of that global reach. The sources mentioned statues of Ertugrul on horseback, directly inspired by the TV series, looking just like the character, were placed by a private housing society in Lahore, Pakistan in 2020. That is how completely fiction can take over the historical narrative.
It's the ultimate example of the media persona becoming the established historical identity. It just crosses continents. People respond to the dramatic, accessible narrative of the actor's performance far more than they do to the dry, contested facts of a 13th century marcher lord.
And sometimes that influence is a little too direct. There's this hilarious anecdote. A bust of Ertugrul was erected in Ordu, Turkey, also in 2020. And it was removed by local authorities because it so strongly resembled the actor from the TV series that people complained it didn't look like the historical figure.
That sums up the entire problem beautifully, doesn't it? The face of the actor has become more real than the history itself. The fiction has replaced the man.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's summarize Ertugrul's overall significance. It seems his true importance is less about the sparse, documented facts of his life, and much more about his foundational role. The pivotal geography he secured, and the myth that sprung up to justify everything that came next.
He was the indispensable bridge figure. He was the marcher lord who held the correct piece of land, Sudut, right on the Byzantine line at the correct historical moment. He bridged the chaotic, fragmenting 13th century Seljuk frontier and the definitive start of the Ottoman Empire under his son. Without Ertugrul securing that specific piece of ground, the Ottoman trajectory might have been very different.
So he didn't just found an empire, he became the necessary strategically crafted myth that provided the political legitimacy and the noble Kayan tribe lineage for the 6 centuries of Ottoman power that followed.
Absolutely. And that leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. If we accept the historical critique that the early Ottomans officially revised their founder's paternity in the 15th century, substituting Gündüz Alp for Süleyman Shah to fit a more prestigious, politically advantageous narrative, it raises a powerful, universal question about history. If the founders of one of the world's longest-lasting empires were willing to fundamentally rewrite their own origins to construct a viable, enduring legacy, how much of the foundational history of any great, powerful, and long-lasting empire is pure historical fact, and how much is intentional, meticulous political creation? The deep dive leaves you to consider where the facts end and where the necessary story begins.